Welcome to the Supplement Engineer Podcast. My name is Robert Chinesky. Today I'm joined by a good friend, colleague in the supplement industry, somebody that is well known, the CEO of VNDL Project, Mr. Moody. Welcome back, my man. How are you?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me back, Robert.
And for those of you watching the podcast on video, you'll notice that Moody and I are both wearing the "What's in Your Supplement Snoop" T-shirt. This was not planned. We opened up the call and I immediately looked at Moody and went, "Fuck, we're wearing the same shirt. I should probably go change." But we both love Justin. He does some great work over there at Supplement Snoop. He's my partner in crime for our weekly podcast. So this is our tribute to him, our unofficial, unplanned tribute to him for the podcast. So. Yeah, man. How are things?
So the irony was, I was thinking of what to wear for this, and then I was like, oh, I got it, the Supplement Snoop shirt. But then I didn't realize for 5 minutes Robert was also wearing one until I really paid attention to his shirt, and I was like, are we wearing the same shirt right now?
Yep. Well,
But yeah, business is good. Very, very, very busy right now. I'm constantly meeting with people or talking to retailers, vendors. It's just a very busy time.
understandable. So you've been a formulator in the industry and a consultant for going on a decade, it seems.
Yeah.
Why now? Why make the switch now when the supplement industry is more crowded than ever? Regulations are getting more and more stringent. Well, you're in Canada, so regulations are already stricter than they are here in the States. Why now did you decide to say, hey, it's screw it as far as the consultant route. I can do this better. I'm going to start Vandal.
Honestly, now's the best time, especially with all the compliance and safety regulations. I've never wanted to have a brand that would skirt the law, that would sell gray area stuff. And at the same time, I would never want to compete with a bunch of people doing that. It's like literally competing with cheaters. How could you possibly win if there's other people using ingredients that people do want, but aren't really that legal to use? How do you compete against people like that? You can't. So like for me, Vandal was something that me and my partners came up with. We had been in the industry for a long time, some of them on the other side of things, retail. And we've always wondered to ourselves, what would it be like if we had our own brand, a brand that not just cared about compliance, actually cared about efficacy of profiles, sort of like a brand for the people, by the people, but with knowledgeable people. There's a difference there, right?
Gotcha, yeah.
Anyone could just make a kitchen sink formula, but it's different when you have people that have worked in the industry for a long time. Safety is a huge thing for me. I don't want people consuming our products and feeling uneducated or like that it wasn't transparent or that it wasn't obvious what's in it. So that's a big thing for me. I saw a huge opening that we could take advantage of because now the market is being a bit more, I don't want to say regulated because the regulation was always there,
right?
But consumers especially, actually care more about these topics.
Yeah.
So now is the time for companies like ours to shine, where we are being transparent about these topics and we are willing to talk about them with consumers, regardless of who they are. It could even be a competitor asking a question on Instagram. I'll still respond because I buy things from other companies.
Yeah.
There's questions I would have about their brands. I don't want to feel like because I'm asking a question that it has to be super negative or some sort of competition. There's a million brands out there.
All right. Why the name Vandal? How does that come out? Because it seems a little bit like edgy, and I don't associate you necessarily with being an edgy guy. Maybe your partners are more about that, but so yeah, why the name? What led y'all to do that?
All right, so without it being in the negative connotation of vandalizing, I like to think of it as almost like vandalizing the concepts what people think should be happening in this industry. I want us to be the outliers in terms of what people are doing. I want people to look at what we're doing and know that that should be the golden path going forward. They should know that transparency is a big thing. For example, companies like NutraBio are always talking about transparency, but there's very few of those brands. I want us to be a gold standard of what people talk about. So it's almost like what people talk about for different fields, disruptors, quote unquote. I don't like the term disruptors, but
game changers.
Yes, Justin will love this. Game changers. But it's true. So like even our brand mantra is literally never settle. It doesn't just apply to the products we're doing. It applies to flavoring. It applies to compliance, safety testing, third-party testing, everything. You and Justin both know that when we were coming up with Vandal, We actually had multiple iterations. We were beta testing like crazy, and this was like months ago. So back in like June, and product came out end of December. So it wasn't one of those cases where people, especially nowadays, you can literally just formulate a product, and in 2 months, whatever your lead time is at your CM, it comes out and you just ship it out to everyone and not give a shit about it.
Yeah.
That is completely what we're against.
Gotcha. So during your time as a formulator and a consultant, how have the challenges been, I guess, more demanding now that you're a co-owner and a co-founder of a brand? What other challenges have you faced in launching the brand and getting it up and going?
Oh boy, responsibility and liability. So as a formulator, it's very easy to make formulas for people and then obviously work within their constraints of cost, whatever their issues are, what they want for their demographic, what their vision is for the brand. But you're not ultimately responsible for it at the end of the day. They can go with it, they can change it however they want. You're not involved in the margins, anything like that. Whereas as a brand owner, literally everything is on you. Not only am I talking to manufacturers, I'm going over compliancy, I'm talking to labs for third-party testing. I am literally doing everything with that respect on top of the formulating. So it makes it much more difficult and much more time intensive, but it's much more rewarding to know exactly what's happening with your products. Because I could be a lot less hands-on if I wanted to be,
Right.
But that is really counterintuitive to what I want our company to be.
Being a Canadian company, there's a few here that stand out and that have started to get a foothold, I guess, in the stateside market. What specific challenges do you see trying to break into the U.S. market and become, a bigger name down here, as opposed to just dominating the Canadian supplement scene, which isn't as competitive or as crowded?
Honestly, the U.S. market's probably easier.
Really?
Not to be. You guys have a lot of brands, but you have the capability of getting momentum. You have a much larger population, and it's not saturated by a few big players. Canada is much different. There are legacy brands that would be in retail that have a lot of power in terms of staying power. Think of it this way. In Canada, up until, say, the advent of Instagram and social media, how would you articulate to a retail owner that you want etc. brand? You really couldn't, other than if you've heard of them from like a magazine. And now in Canada, a lot of the big brands that we're getting away with being really, really complacent are getting pummeled by American brands that are coming over and showing them innovation, giving them the great flavors that people want, giving them exactly what they've been looking for. And people in Canada are willing to pay for the premium. Whereas in the US, I find people aren't really willing to pay for premium products all too often. So, but the US is easier in the sense that once you get in, you have that much more room to market. You can make yourself stand out more, and you're not playing against, I hate to say the term, an old boys club of people who are friends with all the retail chain owners. Yeah. Because think of it this way. To get into a store, you basically have to knock out a different brand to get their shelf space. How do you do that in a market? Well, we're doing it, but it's much harder to do it in a market where half the brand owners probably know the people who own that retail chain intimately because they've been working together for 10 plus years. And they can just give them a call and be like, what is this? Much more difficult, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Since starting
smaller scene, so more competitive, right?
Yeah, right. Since starting up Vandal, obviously you've established a lot of relationships with various companies in the industry during your time as a formulator and whatnot. When you decided to break up, did you get any, you don't have to name any specific brands, but did you get any kind of kickback from people saying, because we know the industry is highly competitive and some brand owners in the thing are a little bit more petty and, than other people are. Did you get any kind of, antagonistic kickback for when you said, hey, I'm going to start doing this, or has it been mostly supportive? Or most people just ignoring it altogether and saying, whatever, I'm focused on my own shit?
Mostly supportive. You get the occasional negative message from people or people that are just frustrated, but I try not to pay attention to stuff like that. It's almost like you said, I like to focus on myself. So I really don't see the need of looking what other people are doing,
Hmm.
and I am okay with them not looking at what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I would much rather get the attention of consumers and people actually interested in products or knowledge than just getting angry messages from people.
gotcha.
So far so good.
Excellent. When you're formulating products for Vandal, do you feel like you're competing against yourself in a sense that since you've designed so many other products for other companies, do you feel like you're almost kind of trying to outdo yourself now with the product? And if so, how do you go about one-upping something that you've already well dosed?
Honestly, all the time. It can be incredibly frustrating when you're looking at something. Like for example, I'm not going to name anything in the nootropic, but when I was making the nootropic, it was very difficult because I've made a number of nootropics over the years, and I was like, how do you just keep making it better and but also different?
That's what I was
Because if
driving
it's
at
too
because I
similar,
could think of
yeah, because
three
if
big
it's
ones that.
that I made,
Yeah,
yeah. And if they're too similar, obviously it's not fair to the people I've worked with before because they bought something unique, and it's not fair to my current customers because that's not what I'm promising them.
right.
So, for example, with the nootropic, um, I mentioned it to you, but I have a brand new ingredient that's going to be in there that's never been used before.
Hmm.
So, innovation is really the best way to differentiate yourself because even with nootropics, I've talked about it before with the pre-workouts and their skeletons. Nootropics have skeletons too. People are going to want to see some sort of cholinergic donor, something
Hmm.
that will inhibit, so for example, huperzine A, a million different things. There's going to be things that people need to see. So there isn't as much room for creativity as I would like, but regardless, it will be the best nootropic I've made thus far, and it'll have some innovative stuff. That's all I can say about it. But yes, it is extremely difficult. I
Excellent.
end up having to spend hours looking at it
Hmm.
and really thinking to myself, is this the right amount of servings? Is this the right amount of this ingredient? Do I want this? Is this too
Hmm.
similar? Is
Yeah,
it different enough? Like, I think about it quite a bit.
gotcha. Pill or powder for the nootropic, or is that yet to be determined?
So, difficult issue for me. Pills still sell better,
Hmm.
regardless of what people say.
Yeah,
A powder gives you the room of doing whatever you want,
right.
depending on the ingredients. Because obviously, with some herbal ingredients, regardless of what people say, because you'll have the armchair scientists back home
Hmm.
looking at stacked and be like, "Oh, it has to have a gram of this ingredient," and I'm like, "A gram of a very herbal ingredient in a powder? Good luck trying to flavor this. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be realistic about your expectations." And if you're not ever manufacturing anything, you don't know these things.
Hmm.
So it's very easy for consumers to say this needs to be this, but it's not possible. So that's why some brands will go the capsule route. For me, I'm really trying to figure that out. Um, More likely going the pill route for now. I could see us having two in the future,
Hmm.
but obviously not right off the bat. That would
Right.
make no sense. Literally having two products cannibalizing each other's sales.
Right.
But I'm still open to having it flavored. I'm realistic at this point, Robert. I'm waiting for flavor samples,
Hmm.
and then if the flavors are good, I would proceed with that, and if not, go with the capsule option.
Gotcha. How did you go about vetting manufacturers? And I guess why is that? The second part of this question is
I
because
knew
obviously
we'd get to this today.
they just had
I
that.
knew you'd get to it with Justin tomorrow, but I'm glad
Yeah,
we're talking about today as well.
yeah. Because they just had that big story about ABH break recently on Stack, and I'm just well, the story originally broke in back in December is when they first got it, and this is for the people that we'll explain it more tomorrow. But this company got 6 warning letters to get their shit in line, and so that's why they've had 800 plus companies work with them over the years because people have coming on and they realize these brands have realized that these people are up to some shady shit and we're going to leave. So that's why you see products back as old as 2013. But how do you go about vetting a manufacturer? Because you've met some and you've established relationships with some during your time in the industry. So, um, and then the second part of that question is why are supplement brands so secretive about where they get their stuff manufactured? Or if you're in your opinion,
um,
I mean, we're not going to get the same answer from two different brand owners, but
oh no, it's
in
fine.
general.
I'm laughing at your second question because I recently saw a huge debate on this on Facebook.
Hmm.
I think it was on Mark Laser's Facebook or someone else's Facebook, but a lot of industry insiders were talking about it.
Yeah.
Um, First question. is when vetting a manufacturer, first thing you want to do is perform an audit. You're technically supposed to perform an audit on your manufacturers, I believe at least every year. So go to their facility, see what their machines look like, see what it actually looks like. Visit the place your products are being made. If you have actually had the chance to see some manufacturers, you would see that some are incredibly shoddy.
Yeah.
Equipment looks like it's run down. They're clearly not following a lot of regulations. I would say McDonald's probably has better practices than them when it comes to safety and cleanliness. So, stuff like that. Like you can obviously walk into an operation and look at it and right away tell, do I want to do business with these people or not?
Right.
It's a gut feeling right away. On top of obviously doing due diligence, looking around, looking at their batch numbers, making sure your stuff is up to scratch if you do work with them. I'll give you an example, and this is something that Mark Laser said. If you're buying something like Creapure, the batch number is actually on it, and you can contact them to make sure that your manufacturer is using what they're saying they're using. But brands don't do that. They don't care.
Gotcha.
They will opt in for whatever's the cheapest thing on their PO and really not care. The second question is, I can see why some brands don't want you to know, because in their mind, it's all about competition. It's all about if X and X brand finds out where I get my stuff made, they might make it there too. And whatever savings I'm getting, they'll be aware of. But at the same time, this is one thing people don't talk about that often, is if you're a smaller brand, the last thing you want is to have a really good manufacturer open a business through a much larger company, because then you get squeezed out. Their priority is way larger than yours. So I know some very large companies that have excellent manufacturers, but they'll never disclose them because they don't want anyone possibly bigger than them coming in and disrupting their supply chain.
Interesting.
Well, I think it's the most valid reason, not really, especially with the ABH stuff that came out. And this is why I was like the Facebook discussion. Tim from Natural Body Inc. was talking about it a fair bit, and he had a really good point of how could you possibly not care where these things are being manufactured? And they were talking about the latest shifts right now in the food industry where food products will literally tell you which farm this was made at and stuff like that. And I think it is valid for consumers to want to know where products are made. And if this becomes a thing, I have no problem saying where our products are made. I don't have a problem doing it now. I'm actually just waiting for our third-party testing to come back. And then once that's done, we'll have an entire page on transparency.
Perfect.
But not a secret.
Okay. As a company that is born and bred in Canada, based out of Canada, are y'all required by law in any way to use Canadian manufacturers, or can you outsource it to the States if that saves on shipping and stuff? You don't have to say where your manufacturer is located. I'm curious. Is that a regulation in order to qualify as a Canadian-owned company?
Nope.
Do you have to be manufactured up there too?
Nope. Actually, most Canadian brands manufacture in the States and then ship back significantly cheaper. Significantly cheaper.
Really?
And oh yeah. So I had something quoted in Canada, and it was double the price of everything in the US consistently, regardless of how many quotes I got from the US, because obviously I talked to a lot of different CMs. Literally double the price, Robert. And I'm always a fan of buying local. You'll even see our Vandal boxes are literally from a local company where the company is headquartered out of. So I do like buying local, but when stuff like that, it's not cost prohibitive. It's not possible. Would you want to buy something that's not feasible to ever buy? It's not going to make sense.
Right. Yeah, I'm not going to go and buy a Lamborghini and put myself, $100,000 in debt when it doesn't make sense to do that. I'm perfectly fine driving my Camry.
So that's what I mean. And the thing with Canada is the only regulations is you have to have an after certificate from your CM just for the border crossing. And then they have to show specific testing to show it's okay to enter into Canada. So, for example, microbiology testing. but there's no real regulations. Health Canada does have something called a site license. So manufacturers can apply for those, and
Okay.
then they're pretty much considered okay by Health Canada. So, for example, my manufacturer has one of those site licenses. So they are allowed to make products and ship them into Canada, and Health Canada is okay with that.
Gotcha.
So again, that's another big trust thing with me is Health Canada has to be okay with them because Health Canada does audit people as well.
They'll go in
So
and
it's not
audit
just
the
the
manufacturing
FDA.
facilities themselves, you're saying?
Yeah. And if they mess up on anything, they're not very forgiving.
Gotcha.
They will literally remove your site license immediately if they feel like you're not complying.
Gotcha. Have you been handicapped in any form with formulating products thus far, dealing with Health Canada?
Absolutely. The wait times with getting licenses for products. Every product I make in Canada has to get a product license that's unique, and every single one takes months of processing time. And that's regardless of how well you articulate it. I can make it very, very easy to read and very simple, but because it's bureaucracy, it's going to take several months.
Right.
So that's the biggest challenge compared to the States. And that's, again, why I'm saying the States is so much easier. You can literally just think of a product, send it to your CM right now, and get it in 2 months and start selling it. Whereas in Canada, not possible.
Gotcha. Well, with that, let's take a deep dive into the supplement facts panel for the pre-workout.
Oh, yeah. I have one right in front of me.
Perfect.
So I don't forget an ingredient.
Yeah. So
I always forget something. There's like 10 things in there.
I guess walk us through what's your methodology with the formula? Why did you pick the caffeine level that you did? And then we can go from there.
Okay, yeah. So caffeine level, basically in Canada, you can't have more than 200 milligrams of caffeine in a single serving of something. So that's why you'll see we actually broke it down to 1 scoop and 2 scoops. It's not me being a penny pincher and being like, oh, I've got to do the 40-20, 40-20. I don't really, it's not that I don't care for it, but it's not the most optimal thing. But literally where you can't have specific ingredients over a certain amount, you kind of have to in Canada. So you'll see that it works out to be roughly 200 milligrams of caffeine per serving. I put the mix in there because I want something hard hitting right at the start, but then I want something a little bit slower as the day creeps on. So that's why you see the mix there. You'll see when our fat burner comes out, the mix of, the ratio of the caffeines is actually different. So that'll be more fun to explain when the fat burner is out. Gotcha. So we'll go through the supplement facts panel together. Citrulline, I don't feel like I have to talk about it very much.
No.
If anyone's listening to this and they don't know much about citrulline, please Google it.
Refer to one of the 6,000 articles Moody or I have written about citrulline.
Precisely. Taurine we covered before, but for people that haven't listened in before, it basically helps increase strength levels, decreases muscle soreness, it decreases oxidative stress. It's really good for eccentric exercise. There's actually a study showing that 7 days post-exercise, as long as you're still ingesting taurine and even if you're not exercising, there are still strength gains. So taurine is one of these things that is something that should be in your stack and you should take long term. It also has studies showing it improves endurance in, they say, middle distance runners. So basically just not marathon runners, but not sprinters. The next one we have is agmatine. Could talk about agmatine forever, but just to summarize to people, it stimulates enos and it can really increase nitric oxide levels in 2 different ways. So one is obviously inhibiting nitric oxide synthase. And then the next one is, and I always pronounce this wrong, imidazole receptors. Yeah. I've written this a million different times, but I can never pronounce it properly. Because I think the only times I ever pronounce it is when I'm on a podcast.
Yeah. I remember last time we were looking at the spelling of it.
I butchered it again. But yeah, that's a really cool part of it is because it actually works selectively on skeletal muscle. And that's why you'll see people using agmatine in GDAs. So I like that quite a bit. So it enhances glucose intake into skeletal muscles is what I mean by that. Our fourth one is grapeseed extract. Grapeseed extract is something that was not pretty common, but like much more common back in the day. and I don't know why I took a back seat. It really is worthwhile. I like it a lot because it promotes blood flow. So basically, it's another cutesy way of saying increases nitric oxide. And the nice thing about it is it's a really nice form of procyanids. They're basically flavonoids that are made up from catechins and epicatechin. Those are all ingredients we all enjoy. So pretty obvious to me why I would use that. It really does help with endurance and nitric oxide levels. I think it makes perfect sense to round it out for the hemodynamic performance matrix, the fourth ingredient, because it's more of an auxiliary support ingredient than something that shines on its own.
Yeah. And it's supporting nitric oxide from a separate pathway than all the other ingredients are too.
Precisely. So that's the thing. When I'm making these formulas, even in the own matrices themselves, all the ingredients usually work on a different pathway, but towards the same goal. And that's what I'm trying to do. There's no point oversaturating things with a million things to do the exact same thing if they're in the exact same pathway.
Yeah.
What's the point? You're wasting everyone's money and nothing's any different. It doesn't become additive at a certain point. So you're just wasting space and money. So we'll move on to tyrosine. Tyrosine I really, really enjoy, and I was happy I was able to put in such a large dose. Tyrosine, for people who don't know, it's an amino acid that's actually involved in the production of neurotransmitters like dopamine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, etc. It has evidence in humans showing it actually improves mood. It improves performance for people that are under very stressful situations. One of the studies actually being military cadets. And I can imagine that was pretty strange. It also improves working memory. It reduces the effects of stress and fatigue for exhausting tasks, aka working out.
Right.
So for me, it's one of those things that if you are using Vandal, you'll notice a lot of euphoria. It's not just from the tyrosine, but tyrosine is definitely a big benefactor in that. And it's something I've liked for a number of years. I use it in quite a bit of nootropics that I've made over the years. You know that.
Yep.
So it was something I felt I had to include in a pre-workout because there's nothing better than having a workout that goes great and having a pre-workout that makes you feel great while you're doing it.
Agreed. And it's weird. It seems by and large like a lot of the pre-workouts these days are shifting, or they've forgotten about tyrosine and just gone the acetylcholine right with everything. They're either including alpha GPC or CDP choline, not as many CDP cholines, either choline bitartrate or alpha GPC and huperzine in there. And I think a lot of companies are forgetting about tyrosine, and that's the one thing that we actually have exercise data on, like you said, that it improves performance in stressful things like exercise. So when you exercise for prolonged periods of time, dopamine levels deplete, serotonin increases, which is part of the reason you feel central fatigue in the body. So by supplementing with tyrosine, you're hoping to stave off that decline in dopamine and hopefully keep performance at a high level for a longer period of time.
You know, exactly. So the acetylcholine stuff, I actually talked about it before, and I have an article on the Vandal website. I call it the acetylcholine pathway trifecta. So choline donor, huperzine A, and acetyl L-carnitine.
Yep.
They're great, but those are things I'd actually prefer for a nootropic than a pre-workout, to be honest. So most of those will be the nootropic, of course.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone's surprised by that. Like I said, there's skeleton ingredients that kind of have to be in there.
Right.
And it's not shocking that you'd have something cholinergic and nootropic. So I'm not revealing
you're not giving
too much
away
here.
Special sauce.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. If you notice, I actually didn't go too far into the cholinergic route here.
Right.
Like I said, another good thing is you could possibly stack these in the future.
That's what I was going to say.
If they want, they could use one scoop and then nootropic.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that you could easily stack that, because a thing, and I've talked about it with you and with Justin on our podcast, is that every product these days has huperzine, and if you want to take a pre-workout in a day and a nootropic later on, there's that risk that you're going to start exceeding that 200 microgram threshold of huperzine A, where things can maybe start to go a little sideways after a certain while.
Oh yeah, especially. It's sort of like the B6 problem, where a lot of products have vitamin B6. That's not a big issue. But then when you get into huperzine A, like you're saying, everyone's putting it in everything.
Yeah.
And if you're taking 3 products a day and you start getting towards upwards of 400 micrograms a day, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah, it's not going to be very pleasant after a while.
Especially because it's a long-lasting ingredient and it's something people are probably going to take for months on end.
Right.
People don't cycle off stuff when they should be, or when they're told to.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I really don't feel comfortable leaving it in the hands of the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to play it safe.
Understandable.
Yeah. Going down from there. Yeah, so the next thing we have is the choline barbiturate. Not going to talk about it too much, but everyone knows it's a choline source. The interesting thing is I haven't really seen many labels that actually disclose how much choline you're getting from the actual source, whereas ours does. And you're technically supposed to, according to the FDA. So I'm surprised, but... So like the QA department at my manufacturer insisted we have it on the label, and I was perfectly fine with it, but I find it amusing because I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
But then I looked it up, and it is there, and I was like, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, even I learn things every day, man. FDA is a very, very tricky thing to navigate.
Apparently so.
Yeah. So then we move on to the lemon balm. The lemon balm is really a unique ingredient that I kind of use a lot. Mm-hmm. I like it for a variety of different reasons. You'll see it over the number of years I've been formulating, and I find it unique because it really helps take the edge off stimulants. It means you can use an appropriate amount of caffeine that'll help you focus, but not have the jitteriness, not have like basically heart palpitations.
Yeah.
And it has some really nice cognitive benefits, and it is anxiolytic, so it does help with stress and anxiety. Mm-hmm. But there are some other effects, and this is something Justin touched on when he was reviewing the product, and he is correct. I put it in for a second reason. It has interesting research out there showing that it helps with gut health. So for a number of years, when I'd be taking pre-workouts, everyone knows this, you take a pre-workout, you're probably going to have to use the bathroom before you go to the gym or before you work out.
Yep.
It's the nature of cholinergic beasts. So Lemon Balm actually has a study in 2010 showing that it helps with indigestion. And it has a 2005 study showing that it actually helps quite a bit with nausea. So for me, its inclusion in Vandal was really twofold. It was the cognitive benefits and the stomach benefits. Mm-hmm. It's enjoyable being able to go to the gym and not feeling like you have to use the bathroom immediately into your first set.
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to. It's happened.
I would agree. It's a cool ingredient. Since I knew it was going to be included in this formula, and it's in, another product that you formulated in the past. I've done like a little deep dive of myself into it the past month or two. And it's I know I always dump on theanine being in pre-workouts because I feel like it takes the edge off. And that one directly elevates GABA levels. So theanine directly elevates GABA levels, where lemon balm, I guess indirectly, it's like the huperzine of GABA because it inhibits GABA transaminase, so it'll preserve GABA levels longer in the brain. Do you think that's maybe why this one doesn't, pull the kick out of the pre-workout as much as that it works indirectly and not as aggressively as theanine would?
Yeah. To be fair, lemon balm can be a little bit sedating.
Right. Yeah, it's in a lot of sleep formulas.
Yeah, but in much higher doses, of course. Right. That's why I was very cognizant of the dose here. Theanine's a much trickier beast, but at the same time, theanine's also been studied a lot more with caffeine in combination than lemon balm has, so I can't make too much of an articulate answer there. Right. I can only speculate, but I think that line of reasoning or thinking is the way I would go with it. I think because it's an indirect effect, you have more downstream effects, and that's why it's a different feeling than theanine. Right. But like I said, theanine has a lot more studies, especially in combination with caffeine. But it's something I don't like to include in a pre-workout for numerous reasons, plus the fact that it's one of those barriers to entry, sorry, not entry, but like the sale for people. Some people literally see a product with theanine and just check out. Yeah. I don't want that. It's not worth it to me. It's the same reason I wouldn't use ingredients like creatine monohydrate or beta alanine,
Mm-hmm.
really no reason to put them in pre-workout. This has been said a million times over the
Agreed.
years, and yet people will still ask or mention it doesn't have creatine. And I look at them, I'm like, do you really want 150 plus grams of your pre-workout to be from creatine that you can buy for dirt cheap?
Yeah, it's
And
exactly.
then have
That's
to also
what.
pay the shipping way on top of that and all this other stuff, right?
Right. And that was one of the things with the new C4. Everybody's saying, "Oh, the scoop size is massive. Cellular is finally deliver." I'm thinking, over half of the actives are creatine and beta alanine, shit that you
Yeah,
don't
the
need
beta
before
alanine's at
pre-workout.
6.4
Yeah, it's
grams.
it's retarded to do something that high. There's no need to have either of those ingredients pre-workout unless you're just like itching your face off.
I would have a legitimate nightmare
Yeah.
taking 6.4 grams of beta alanine right now. That's way too much for me. I remember back in the day, man, taking 3 grams, and because I've always had a beard,
Yeah.
just itching all day, and it was just not conductive to having a good workout for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there are people that like it, but
Yeah.
again, it goes back to the classic of people feeling something, quote
Right.
unquote.
Exactly.
So when they, so that's actually one of the funniest things is getting feedback for Vandal.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people actually would comment on whether they liked not having the tingles or just commenting that it didn't have tingles.
Mm-hmm.
And it really made me realize how pervasive stuff like beta alanine still was in Canada compared to the US in pre-workouts.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're always a little bit behind in terms of what you guys have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why you're seeing, like I mentioned earlier, the American brands coming in and making a killing because the Canadian brands aren't willing to really upgrade their look.
Gotcha.
It's been selling for them, so why change?
Why change? Yeah, that makes sense.
Some of them are changing because they realize they have to.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Up next on the list, we got one of my personal favorite ingredients is rhodiola.
Rhodiola. So this one, I actually don't have that much to say about it because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Rhodiola is one of my favorite adaptogens. It's not often used in pre-workouts. I don't know why, because it's easy to flavor. It's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. As you know, I've done it before.
Yeah.
In probably one of your favorite pre-workouts.
Yep.
And yeah, I honestly enjoy it quite a bit. It goes back to what I was talking about having things that are anxiolytic, but actually help you mentally get a boost of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So even though rhodiola is anxiolytic and it might make you feel less stressed, it doesn't mean it's not providing a mental boost. It is providing a mental boost.
Yeah.
I like to think of it as almost like a caffeine that doesn't give you the side effects of caffeine. It enhances your performance in general. And honestly, it's one of my favorite ingredients to use of all time.
Yeah, I love it. And just like you said, it's a great stimulatory ingredient that's not a direct CNS stimulant. I mean, I take it, I would say, damn near every day, especially like if in the afternoon work when I don't feel like I've already had my pre-workout today or like a cup of coffee with breakfast or something. And I want something to kind of get my mind altered into the state of productivity mode. And I'll take rhodiola and, one or two other little bulk nootropic ingredients, and that gets me going, and I don't need any other caffeine, and it's wonderful. Like you said, I wish it was included in more pre-workouts because it's got the anti-fatigue benefits. It's got a few studies, even in exercise performance, showing better performance. So it's, I like it.
I think it's more of a cost thing to people. It's really not that expensive, but it's
Yeah.
more expensive than some of the other ingredients. So people get worked up about that,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're going for a good extract.
Yeah.
So it really can affect what people want in their product.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I never envisioned this formula without rhodiola.
Yeah.
It was very important to me.
Is there a specific standardization that you used on this extract? Sometimes we'll see the 3%/2%, like solidicize and
3
Roosevelt
to
and all
1.
that, or it's 3 to
3
1.
to 1.
Okay.
Yeah. So the irony is, and this bothers me a lot, is I have to be very vague on the label, but I have no problems disclosing what everything is on our website.
Mm-hmm.
Between a dispute of me arguing with the QA department and my manufacturer, and them telling me this is what they have to do for Health Canada not to remove their site license.
Gotcha.
So the original one had a much different formula. So you've seen it before,
Mm-hmm.
and so you saw the label changes and stuff. So
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not trying to be transparent. It's that the manufacturer is not letting me to a certain extent. But that's why I'm telling people, and I actually talked about this with PricePlow. When I talked to PricePlow, I'll actually be disclosing the extracts for everything, and it'll come up again anyway when you see the third-party testing. So it's not a big shock there either.
Right.
But yeah, it was incredibly frustrating for me to try to market something as transparent and then get told by a QA department that doesn't own your brand or have any equity that you can't do so-and-so. But
Weird.
It is what it is.
Such is the beast.
Yeah, but like I said, there's no problems with us putting it on the website. So I don't want anyone feeling like because we don't have some of the standardizations in there that it's all bunk or just not standardized. It is. I think by using the product, you'll know immediately it is, but
yeah,
I don't like that excuse either, because it goes back to the old days of, oh, don't worry about it, just try it out and see what you think. It's the exact same argument people are making with like creatine, like CEE.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to try it to know it's bunk. Like, don't send me your stuff.
Agreed. And last but not least, we've got pomegranate fruit extract. I'm curious I'll let you explain why you included him. I'm curious why you put it in the energy endurance matrix and not in the hemodynamic performance matrix, because it's also got some blood flow benefits too, like grapeseed does. So I'll let you get after it.
So it really does help with blood flow, but if you look at the clean energy and endurance matrix, there's a certain rule in the industry that matrices have to have a certain amount of ingredients in them. You can't have a matrix with just 2 ingredients.
Yeah.
So a little bit of trickery that way, because I'm being honest with people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it actually does help with endurance. Pomegranate has more than 2 studies in humans at the exact same dose that we're using and the exact same standardization, showing that it improved endurance literally in humans. This is a very important thing that a lot of people don't make distinguishing factor between what studies are in humans, what are in animals, and what are in vitro. So this has been shown multiple times in humans that it helps with endurance. So to me, it's important to put into it a clean energy matrix that it does help with endurance. It does help with blood flow, of course, but that's not the primary reason I put it in there. I wanted the pre-workout to be a pre-workout that's not just for people that are going to be lifting. It's for people that are going to be doing exercise in general. Could be CrossFitters, could be people just want to go for a run but not take too many stims, hence the 1 scoop option. Because there are a lot of ingredients in here that are performance enhancers. And because we're not going crazy on the stims, the only stim is literally caffeine. And then we have a couple other products to make the caffeine not as blunt. It's a pre-workout for me that should be used by all athletes and not just people going to the gym. The gym population is a very small population of athletes out there, and especially people using supplements. So it's kind of naive to go for just that one population. But yeah, to round it up, pomegranate extract, really helpful for an increase in blood flow, decrease in fatigue, and an improvement in performance.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, then what else is in the pipeline for y'all in 2020? So the pre-workout's already out. I got my notification from the postal service that they tried to deliver the package when I was out yesterday working. So I gotta go
so you
drive
didn't get to see it yet.
No, I gotta drive to the post office tomorrow and go pick it up.
So it actually comes in a cool little box. Let's grab it.
I think I saw Justin's. Yeah, it comes in a it's a light blue box.
You'll get your tubs and we'll have a good time.
Sweet.
But yeah, pipeline for us. We're working on not getting 11 plus products right now. I have them all formulated because I'm a studious keener like that. So it's more of a matter of Health Canada. But at the same time, we're also going to be expanding into the States a lot sooner than I anticipated because I'm not doing this again. I'm not waiting 8 months in between every product. Like, not going to happen.
Yeah.
So expect to see us expanding into the States within the next 6 months. But in the pipeline, we have the fat burner, a nootropic, an intra, and then some more innovative stuff. Once we get past, and I don't like saying past, I guess. Once we have our sports nutrition stuff out, you'll see more of a shift towards general health as well. So it's not just going to be a sports nutrition brand. It'll be a brand that covers everything, with sports nutrition being part of the main focus. But there are a lot of different things that people have been looking for from herbal supplements that they're not getting that we can make top-notch formulas at. So why not?
Gotcha.
Some of them obviously don't want to disclose because they're new categories. I don't want people to get ideas and
Right.
start stealing them from me. I kid you not. I mentioned this to you before, but someone already stole quite a bit from Vandal before we even had product for sale. And it was a new one for me because I've had people copy me before, but never before a product's actually been for sale or like out anywhere. That's a new one.
Gotcha. Are there any of the newer trademarked ingredients? Because within the pre-workout, there's none of the trademarked ingredients or the patented ones that we see. Do you think that the Canadian customers, or I guess customers at large, are easily swooned or wooed by those trademarked and patented ingredients, or not so much?
I would honestly say the Americans are much more go-getter happy about patented ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
It's becoming more of a thing in Canada, but not nearly to the degree in the US where certain products pretty much all have, for example, teagreen in it or a form of or dynamine or something that comes out of Compound Solutions
Yeah.
or any of the other trademark people. It's much more of an American thing, but it is creeping up in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
There are people now formulating with dynamine, Vaso-6, etc. in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, we are going to do a pump product in the future, and I don't have a problem mentioning that it's going to have Vaso-6 in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that we're not going the patented trademark route for some of them. It's for me, do I feel this ingredient warrants the cost, and then the cost that's going to be passed on to the consumer at the end.
Right.
Because don't forget, consumers are going to pay multiples of what I paid.
True.
In the end.
Right.
So do I want something similar to caffeine, but not that different for, can't even make up a number, but like
4 times more expensive?
Much more than 4 times.
Yeah.
No. Because people aren't going to appreciate it, and then people are going to complain about price,
mm-hmm.
and it goes back to me as the owner.
Yeah.
Or one of the partners. It's like it goes back to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like that. I don't like the games of just putting a bunch of patented stuff in there and being like, this is a great formula because it has a bunch of patented stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
If there's nothing in there that's making any sense to me, I don't care how many great ingredients are in there. I'm just not going to buy it.
Gotcha. Do you think Vandal can be competitive in terms of cost with the brand, since you'll have the extra layers that add additional cost to the products, like the NPNs, Health Canada, and transporting it back across the border and everything?
Absolutely. Yeah. You'd be surprised at how cheap some companies are, mm-hmm. but because we're basing ourselves as a premium model, I have no problems not sparing expenses on things. Mm-hmm. The product is not cheap to make, as you can tell by the ingredient profile and by the actual bottling and all that stuff. Like even these bottles are custom-made bottles. It's actually a lot harder than you would think to find clear bottles that would fit this, that wouldn't be massive or wouldn't be too small. Mm-hmm. Because bottling companies only make specific things that people are buying, and this isn't something that people already sell. So even then, we had to take on some extra cost on that. Mm-hmm. So even like our CM didn't provide our bottles, for example, because we're paying for that out of pocket. But I don't mind that. It can make it harder to be competitive with people that are making $3 to $4 formulas, mm-hmm. but those aren't people I was ever competing with against in the first place. I don't want the race to the bottom type of mentality.
Correct.
I want people to know what they're paying for, what they're buying, that the extra bucks they're spending on this are what allows us to be able to third-party test things and make things that are more creative than what they're getting right now and what they feel isn't benefiting them at the moment. Mm-hmm.
How do you attract the customers and get them to buy into the premium brands that are, well formulated or using the high end ingredients? How do you get them to do that and shift them away from the I gotta have the BOGO mentality? So whatever is in the cheap ass $4 product I can get at GNC or Vitamin Shop, and I get a second tub free. How do you change the mindset of the consumer and try to get that, or is that not the battle to fight, and you should just focus on the people that already know and are willing to pay for quality?
No, it's a battle very worth fighting because you want as many consumers as possible, and most of them don't know that. Mm-hmm. You have to remind them, like I said, where you're spending your dollars is how this industry is going. If you are continuously buying from brands that sell really cheap formulas at absurd prices, you really have to question what kind of ingredients they're using, the quality. The ABH thing comes up right now. If products are super cheap all the time, question where they're being manufactured, question what's going into your products. Consumers should know that by being not cheap, but by being strict with their budgets on specific things, there is no room for innovation. And like I mentioned, there's people will complain about third-party testing costs, but at the same time, these companies are the ones that are doing BOGOs all the time. So they never cared about that to begin with. Whereas with me, I would rather, even from a consumer point of view, if it was literally $1 extra per bottle and a bunch of people are buying it, I would pay that dollar to know that this product I'm buying is third-party tested, and that it's safe. 100%.
Okay.
So that's really the big factor to me is people need to have more education. So even on our end from Vandal, we're going to have sections on the website that are purely on science. We're going to have a lot of explainer videos that we're working on currently on top of the blogs. So it should be a more interactive experience. And I think brands need some sort of persona to identify with and to have for consumers to look at and be like, this is the guy that runs this company, or he's ultimately responsible for this, or she. And when they trust you, it shouldn't be blind trust, but it should be trust based on your reputation and what value you're providing them. If I'm seeing an anonymous brand that I couldn't tell who owns it or what the hell is going on, and it already looks kind of shady to me, I'm hitting X immediately. But if it looks like someone I can identify with, I share the same values as them, same brand values, etc., I'm much more likely to listen and pay attention. So those are different ways you can get those consumers to understand why your stuff is premium, is getting them to listen in the first place and to pay attention.
Gotcha. A lot of companies, my next question is, how do you go about just reaching consumers and gaining awareness as a new brand in the industry? Because doing the SEO play, Google's constantly changing the algorithm. So just creating these long-form contents isn't as effective as it used to be in the years past. Now you have to have things that say medically reviewed by so-and-so, or, authority research by XYZ person and all of that stuff. At the same time, going on and doing Facebook ads, Google ads, or Instagram, there's companies that spend upwards of 6 figures a month putting out ads for that. So how do you go about, is it more about doing direct marketing and doing like email blasts to people by that way, just going like word of mouth and a grassroots style of advertising? How do you go about just reaching consumers and getting the word out on Vandal now?
Honestly, without going too far into detail, because obviously this is the bread and butter of a lot of companies, is not actually their formulations, but their marketing. Because a lot of people forget most supplement companies are just literally marketing companies. Honestly, organic reach, and obviously the Facebook ads and the Instagram ads, but we're getting a lot of growth just from organic reach, from just talking to people, from different vendors, etc. Marketing is unfortunately something that's never going to go away in this industry. But the same thing, it's in every industry. So when people complain about too much, even look at tech. Tech has a lot of marketing. Everything does, even your food.
Exactly. Look at how many Coca-Cola ads there are during the Super Bowl, or
like even if you buy a pack of like a bag of granola from like Kellogg's, there's a million different things on it that's marketing, but you don't look at it as marketing like you would for the supplement industry. But again, because the supplement industry is always very outlandish with their claims, like 300% growth in a week. So it's kind of a thing we put to ourselves. But for our brand, mostly organic and obviously paid ads. All I can say for now.
Gotcha. I'm surprised you brought up claims and marketing jargon like that. We were at the store doing our weekly grocery run, and I was getting some quinoa, and I'm looking at the label on the quinoa, and it says exceptionally rich in protein. And you flip over the ingredients panel, or the nutrition facts, and in a single serving of quinoa, there's only 4 grams of protein. And I'm thinking, how the fuck as a food manufacturer can you get away with writing this on the label when I can't write increases nitric oxide production on a supplement label? I have to put supports blood flow or supports nitric oxide production. How can they get away with doing something that doesn't make sense? are the food regulations that much more lax than supplement regulations, or is it just a company that's flying under the radar?
No, that's actually a perfectly acceptable thing to say. I'll tell you something right now. So when we were talking with the choline and how I have it broken down in the formula,
Yeah.
that's actually because if something is considered choline rich
Hmm.
and it's a food item or a supplement, you have to mention that. So same thing with the protein. The 4 grams is probably somehow enough because
Yeah.
they probably added something to say it's enriched with protein
Hmm.
that allows them to get away with such a ridiculous claim.
Yeah.
Because I see it all the time too with like cereals. It'll say like 10 grams of protein, and then you look at it and it'll have 40 grams of carbs or something.
Right.
And, or like some cereals will literally advertise the protein count with milk included, and I'm like, are you fucking
Correct.
kidding?
Yeah. And it's always amazes me how that, there's this always this giant scope on the industry, and there doesn't seem to be that much kickback on these food labels, or I guess people just aren't aware of it, just the average consumer. So because my wife's a teacher, and so she's not as educated as you and I are on supplements, but she's starting to understand a few things and how supplement companies pull off certain things. And then she'll be at the store, they're talking with one of her colleagues at work, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I'm doing this because it's high in protein," and they're eating like a tablespoon of peanut butter. I'm thinking, peanut butter is not a protein source; it's a fat. I mean, it's
It's a
got more
fat
fat.
source.
Yeah, just God damn, man, it's
It has protein in it, but it's primarily a fat
right.
source.
Yeah, everything is enriched with protein. It's got 5 to 6 grams of protein per serving. I mean, that's not a protein bar. That's not a protein-rich product. It's got a trace amounts of protein. When you're getting 200 calories and 5 grams of protein in something, that wouldn't exactly call that a protein-rich snack.
But that's exactly the thing. They get away with it because of regulations allowing them to get away with it.
Yeah.
It's just the word enriched. Like it bothers me a lot because
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that you'll see in food aisles that deliberately trick consumers into thinking they're being healthier.
Right.
And it bugs me because I'm like, people are making the active choice to try to get healthier, and they're still getting screwed.
Yep. Yeah. It's marketing. It's marketing and advertising all over the place.
So that's the thing. When I talk about marketing, I talk about responsible marketing.
Yeah.
Like even if you look at our products, there's literally 4 claims on there. I'll read them off and tell me if they sound the least bit ridiculous. Smart energy and focus, increased endurance, elevated mood, and superior blood flow.
Nope.
That's
Sounds
as tame as it really gets in this
very
industry.
legitimate to me.
Yeah, and I even have the ingredients underneath them to tell you where the claim is coming from.
Interesting.
So there's no trickery and no guesswork. So that's the thing. People just have to be responsible with their marketing.
Yeah.
Because when I talk about marketing, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say it's not an important thing. It's very important.
Correct.
But like I said, it has to be done responsibly.
Right. Is there any plans for, have you gotten any kind of demand? I don't know how big the vegan and keto movements are in Canada. I mean, it seems like both of those just won't die here in the States. But are you getting any kind of push or pressure to release products in line with those things?
Yeah. So actually with Vandal, we're going to have, so Vandal right now is already not artificially dyed,
Right.
but we're going to have a few flavors that are also naturally flavored.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the keto stuff, I'm never going to do keto stuff, so don't worry about that.
Thank you.
It's all about junk. Yeah, don't waste your money on keto stuff, please. You're literally consuming an exogenous source of ketones that is going to be used further, and you're not doing exactly what you think you're doing from a ketosis diet. You're doing the opposite. Please stop doing this. But the vegan stuff is a valid point where people want to know if their stuff is vegan or not. And I say that because my sister's a vegan.
Yeah.
So, but no, with the capsule products, they're all going to be veggie caps,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll say right on it. And for some of the new stuff in the future, it will say right on it if it's vegan or not.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm hesitant. I'm more likely to say, and I say this because I already have one of the labels finished, vegetarian friendly than vegan friendly.
Yeah.
Because I never want to claim I know exactly what the manufacturer is doing every time they're manufacturing something at all times. What if there is something like egg processed there before?
Yeah.
Not my battle to fight, and I don't want to upset anyone because it is something they're very serious about.
Mm-hmm.
people, if they're vegan, they're very serious about stuff like that.
Right.
So I'd rather take the easier route of saying all the ingredients in here are vegetarian friendly, and it may be processed in a place that has nuts and etc. But even then, those are vegetarian friendly.
Correct. Yeah.
So I don't want to go the full vegan route and have people upset because it's not honest either.
Perfect. Do you foresee doing any kind of protein powder with the brand? You mentioned 11 products in the works, and protein is one of those products that there's very little margin on. And I
don't want to ever do a protein.
There we go.
Ever. People don't realize how much of a nightmare it is. It's great for getting shelf space and getting people to talk about your stuff because people are always going to be using protein.
Yeah.
But between the margins, the shipping, the lack of innovation, a million different things, I don't even want to get in that route.
Yeah.
It would literally be just a flavoring contest, and everyone can just hire flavoring houses.
Mm-hmm.
So what innovation am I providing other than maybe I'm willing to pay a little bit more for flavoring? It's not really innovation.
Yeah, I guess, adding something like Velocitol to it or collagen
I've done that
peptides or
before.
something like that.
I've done that before.
Well, yeah, I know you have. That's why I mention it. You could do that.
It's not anything I want to do, and people don't want to pay for that. People aren't going to pay for the $9 difference between 2 tubs of protein for something they don't tangibly see.
Right. By and large, do you still think that, because we see blends or we see some of these alternative proteins, but do you still think by and large whey is still king?
Yes.
In terms of sales?
Always will be.
Yeah.
Always will be.
Is that just because of the mystique, I guess, that's around it, like, and the hype that's built up over it around the years, or is it, are the other ones just that much more cost prohibitive? Or is the consumer that uneducated?
Consumer and industry.
Yeah.
Industry constantly pushing whey as the best source of protein. Whey happening to be pretty much the best source of protein.
Yeah. Exceptionally high biological value.
Consumers only expecting whey to be good. Mm-hmm. Like, you'll see studies showing that rice protein can be as effective in athletes as whey protein.
Yeah.
And then you'll see studies saying it's not.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. All these back and forth arguments. Whereas with whey protein, none of that. Very easy.
Exactly.
Studied so many times, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So honestly, even as a consumer, you can just be lazy and know that whey protein is cheap, and not cheap, but like
cost
it's not
effective,
expensive,
affordable.
It's cost effective, exactly. Yeah. And why have to read into new things if it already works?
Correct.
Like, it goes back to what Justin was talking about. People always asking about milk protein isolate and why they don't see it. Mm-hmm. No one's buying it. Like, PES uses it, but they're using a blend, for example.
Yeah.
And it's selling a lot, obviously, because Select sells well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see it being sold on its own, and it's because people will only buy casein or whey on its own. And even then with casein, that's because of the marketing effects people had over the years of actually believing
you're going to go catabolic, bro, when you sleep.
Yeah, the slow release to prevent catabolism from going to bed.
Don't go catabolic,
bro.
Take
it with their cottage cheese at night before they go to bed to make sure they're good.
Oh, man. All right. Time for some lightning round light questions. What does your current supplement regimen look like? I know we discussed it last time, but it's been a while and people kind of rotate things in and out as the year goes on. So what, if any, supplements are you using right now?
Honestly, for me, I use a nootropic every morning. So I use Orange Brainwash, Vandal Pre-Workout, obviously. Yep. But before that, I had other pre-workouts, but they're good. Mostly general health stuff. And then the occasional blue sugar from Controlled Labs. Mm-hmm. So I do like GDAs.
Yeah.
But honestly, just general health stuff. A lot of it is from Controlled Labs, to be fair. Mm-hmm. But it's stuff that I really, really enjoy for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But no, mostly general health stuff. In terms of supplements, there'll be stuff I'll add in, like, of course, like creatine or betaine or taurine. Mm-hmm. But in terms of pre-made stuff, not much. It's like I was saying last time. The older I'm getting, the less I'm using.
Yeah.
Because you realize how much crap you're using every day, and you're like, what am I actually getting from all of this?
Right.
Or it literally just sits in my stomach half the day from taking so many powders a day.
Right.
Or so many capsules a day.
Yeah.
And I don't have the most sensitive stomach, because I've been doing this for a long time. Mm-hmm. But if it's making my stomach hurt, it's not good.
Have you ever experimented a lot with, and do you like Noopept? And I know we can't
I
use it.
used
It's
it
not
a
super kosher.
long time ago for quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's very aggressive, and I found it a little hard to come off of.
Yeah.
And I was glad to come off of it because if you use it too long term, I find it becomes counterproductive and it becomes more of a negative experience in my experience. And I read a lot of people saying similar things on the internet. Like when I used Noopept, this was like a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
This was back when Piracetam was still the Racetam to use.
Gotcha.
And there wasn't phenylpiracetam back then either. That was like just a Russian drug of lore and obscurity that we were hoping one day we might see. And you have all the crazy research chemicals available now that I would have never had the chance to use back then.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also glad because back then I would have been dumb enough to use a lot of these things. Where I was like, no, I would have because I was curious.
Yeah.
But whereas like now, you couldn't pay me to test half these things.
Right. What dose of Noopept were you using, just out of curiosity?
Probably 50 milligrams.
That's a lot.
I'm an extreme person.
Yeah. As I said, the highest I've ever used is 30, and that sits pretty well with me. But I don't use it all that often. If I want to have like a 6-hour straight work period where I don't like get up from the desk, then I'll probably add Noopept to whatever nootropic I'm taking that day, because I don't think any of the nootropics I currently have Noopept in it. So I bought some bulk off Nootropics Depot or something, and that's been working. And I'll sprinkle it in here or there, and that's kind of like a rhodiola in that it'll give me that, that little kickstart cognitively instead of having to take caffeine or something to feel energized and stimulated in the zone.
Well, if you want to talk about like crazy stacks back in the day, when I'd be studying, I would literally pour in Focus XT, put in 5 grams of Piracetam, get in some other stuff, get in glucoroxolone, get in some Tyrosine, literally like 9 different things I'd add into a drink and do this every day.
Jeez.
So like that's what I'm saying. As I get older, I take a lot less because you're just like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Did you get much of benefit or tangible effects from glucuronolactone?
I honestly did.
Yeah.
Mostly just mood effects like euphoria. Mm-hmm. And that was like at a 2-gram dose. Yeah, so even with the stuff I was talking about back then, I was using a lot of it too.
Yeah. Because I mean, we see that ingredient in energy drinks, and nobody really knows how much is in the energy drink. If it's below caffeine, then you're getting less than 300 milligrams or less than 200 milligrams. But we don't see it as much in the industry anymore. There was a time where we would see it in pre-workouts every now and then, but I think that's kind of when energy drinks first exploded onto the scene and all the energy drinks had it. But nowadays you don't really see it at all. And there's not a ton of research on it, but that's interesting.
There's very minimal. I remember working on it for someone before around the time we were talking about with energy drinks, and that's actually how I started liking it. And we ended up just selling it in bulk because we couldn't really find much in terms of what value it would add to a pre-workout. Mm-hmm. But because I was getting it bulk, I was using 2-gram doses, and I actually found it did help. But again, anecdotal, and that's also from like 10 plus years ago now.
Gotcha.
So maybe I'm just fond of old memories.
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned that you were a fan of GDAs in general. One thing, and this is an article I've been wanting to write for a while, I've always wanted to title it, because a lot of the dosing recommendations on these GDAs say take with your pre-workout meal or take with your immediately post-workout meal. And my issue with that is that if it's got like a decent size of berberine in it, berberine has got some powerful antioxidant effects, and it activates AMPK, which works in direct effect to mTOR, which you're trying to stimulate with your
berberine
workout.
Also lowers cyclic AMP levels.
Yeah, and I'm trying. You don't want any of that. So I the companies that are doing this and saying take it here. I'm thinking, are you fucking retarded? You don't know what you're doing.
It's because they don't know, Robert. Even with their directions, you'd be surprised how many companies I consulted for, and I would be the one to tell them the directions because they'd have no idea.
Yeah.
Or like some of them would write their own directions, and I'd be like, you should have asked me. Like, this was not the best way to take this.
Yeah.
But yeah, with a GDA, you shouldn't be taking it pre-workout or post-workout. Those are the best time. First of all, post-workout, you don't need anything.
No.
That's the best time in the planet to be taking carbs or anything.
Correct.
And pre-workouts, what's the point? You're literally about to work out very shortly. For me, GDAs should be used with carb-heavy meals away from workouts, especially if you're taking berberine.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's a headlining ingredient. Do you think that berberine just in and of itself is a great ingredient that would benefit more people than not in looking into it? Because obviously people look at metformin as a life extension drug.
I was going to say it outperforms metformin, so of course.
Yeah,
it's one of those ingredients that I recommend to a lot of people, but it's hard to find in bulk. Mm-hmm. And I also really recommend to people, please do not buy the powder, buy capsules. It is extremely yellow, almost to the point of being fluorescent, and it will stain anything you touch it with. So if somehow you find bulk powder, don't do it. Don't try to capsulate it on yourself at home either. It's going to be a mess. Yeah. Save yourself time, buy capsules. But yeah, berberine is something I like quite a bit. Mm-hmm. I used it in a GDA almost a year ago. And that's the thing with GDAs. Even with berberine, you don't have to put in 1.5 grams every time, because you also don't want to just destroy your blood glucose levels. It goes back to the same argument with estrogen. Some estrogen is healthy. You don't want to crush your estrogen levels. Yeah. So when people put in crazy suicidal AIs that have a crazy IC50 number, I'm like, that's a little bit of overkill.
You're talking about aromatase?
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, what is it? What's the ingredient I'm thinking of?
Oh, you're thinking of aromacin.
Aromacin, that was it, yeah. Or no, arimistane, that's what I was thinking of. Arimistane.
Aromastane, that's the one, yes.
Yeah.
Aromacine's not the legal one.
Yeah.
Aromastane, yes. But aromastane at the same time, it doesn't really crush estrogen. It's more of a cortisol thing, I find. Mm-hmm. And that's something we talked about, not you and I, but we talked about in the forums, like even back in 2012, like when Cyrus was around. Mm-hmm. This was something we talked about extensively. But yeah, that's the thing. People don't realize is this homeostasis in the body. Your body does have a way of evening things out. Yep. And when you're taking all these extremes all the time, that becomes the new norm, and that's not good.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, then, thank you very much. This was an enjoyable chat as always. This is the part of the podcast where you get to shamelessly plug anything and everything about Vandal, and leave any kind of teasers you want to for the faithful listeners.
Yeah, of course. First of all, Robert, once again, thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. I really enjoy the questions you ask and how much you're providing for people listening in. It is one of those rare shows where you actually get insights as to how the industry works, not just from brand owners, but even manufacturers and other people you've had on. So I'm always thankful to be back on. As for shameless plugs for myself, you can find us at www.vndlproject.com. So VNDL. So it's like the word Vandal without the A's in there. You can find us on Instagram at VNDL Project. And you can find me on Instagram at VNDL CEO. Any more for a shameless plug? What else do I plug?
Products? Anything? We got the pre-workout out now. How soon until we can expect the next
pre-workout's out now. We have it out in 4 flavors, so check it out on the website. I think you will not be disappointed. And in terms of what products we have up next, the next one's going to be the fat burner, and then we'll start really diving into some cool stuff. But I can promise you, in the first 4 products, there will be the nootropic I'm talking about, so you won't have to wait too long for it.
Yes. Excited.
I don't like teasing and not having something happening soon. It's not fun.
Excellent. All right, buddy. Well, and thank you again for your time. This is a pleasure, and best of luck with the brand launch and continued success.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Robert.